Okay, so welcome to another episode. I believe this is episode number 4 of the Story of Life podcast. I'm trying to get better at doing these more often. Now, you're going to hear the crickets. It's 5 in the morning, 4:35. It's early. It's not early for me. I have a habit since the dogs passed. I have a habit. A lot of mornings I'll wake up between 3 and 4 in the morning and just not be able to get back to sleep. Just a habit I formed with both dogs at the end. It's not the subject of the video, but the point is that it could be 5 o'clock and it is not early for me. Sometimes I'm out here by 3:30 just sitting, walking. The point is that it's meant to be that you don't see any real picture. But you hear the crickets, don't you? I'm sure you do. So today's story is, I'll call it the story of eBay, but that doesn't quite do it justice. There's multiple lessons that you can take from this story. It's a story about what you can accomplish when you don't quit. It's a story of how you just never know what is coming for you, when it's coming for you. You never know what's going to save your ass. So I guess I got to start all the way back in 1998, really. My ex-wife was pregnant with my oldest son, Kyle, and we'd had a falling out with my parents, or I should say I had a falling out with my parents. And there was about a 6-month period there that we weren't talking to them. And then it got closer to where, we knew that baby was going to be coming out in, 3 or 4 months. And it was like, oh, geez, I guess we're going to have to reconcile this. So we did. And, but during the time that we weren't speaking with them, we made plans, light plans, to move to the eastern shore of Virginia. We were living in Florida at the time, living in a place in Hollywood, Florida. And we made plans to move to the eastern shore of Virginia not long after Kyle was born. We didn't want to raise him in Florida. We'll just start there. So he's born March 17th, 1999, and by the 4th of July weekend, we were driving to the eastern shore of Virginia. Now, we had what was that car? It was some kind of sedan. I can't remember which car it was because I had a sedan when I was younger. I had a 1978 Monte Carlo. Oh, I loved that car. But I can't remember what kind of sedan it was that we drove to Virginia in. But it was 4th of July. It was over the 4th of July time frame. And we had no air conditioning in that car. And we were driving from basically Hollywood, Florida to the eastern shore of Virginia. And it was like this record heat. I mean obnoxious record heat. And no air conditioning. My ex had to sit in the back seat with Kyle, baby Kyle, and feed him ice chips and rub ice on his head to keep him cool. So we get there and we get moved in, and not long. not long after we got there, my grandfather passed away. I had to fly back home, go to the funeral, fly back to Virginia. And, you know, I guess I'll tell the story. The original plan was I was going to work at the chicken processing plant. There is a giant, I think it's Purdue, there's a giant chicken processing plant 10, 15 minutes away from where we were living. That was the plan. I was going to work there and be a career company chicken person. And then my ex would stay home with the kid. And so I applied for the job, and they were basically like, all right, so here's the positions that are open. Which one do you want? I took the one that paid the most, of course, which was chicken hanger. That's what they called it, chicken hanger. And they said, do you want to, and they tried to talk me out of it. They said, that's a tough job, man. I don't know. I'm like, yeah, I've been in the military. Hanging chickens. I can hang a chicken. Come on. I had been fishing my whole life and cleaning fish, since at least my mid-teens. I can hang a chicken. Well, I show up for work the first day. It's probably like a 5 in the morning till whatever, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon shift, whatever it would be. It was early in the morning. And I show up. After the first day, that was normal, like training and the little videos and stuff that they show you. But when I finally showed up for work, they brought me down to where they did the chicken hanging. And if you can close your eyes and imagine a Freddy Krueger movie, and it's a scene where whoever's being chased by Freddy is in this dark, dingy, wet basement with a bunch of equipment and the chains hanging down, almost like an Aliens movie. But Freddy, if you can imagine what that dingy basement would look like, that's what the chicken hanging room looked like. Like, okay, all right, this is going to be interesting. Oh my God, it's so loud. Because what the chicken hanging line entails is, imagine you're sitting in front of, or standing in front of this metal conveyor belt. And, it's a normal conveyor, but up above the actual platform are these giant, it's a whole string of giant metal hooks. And if there's no chicken on the hook, they're clanging back and forth and clank, 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 clank. It is the loudest, most obnoxious environment I've ever seen. So your job is to stand there, and as they offload the chickens from trucks on the outside, then the chickens come to you on the conveyor belt, and you have to pick up the chicken and you hang them upside down. You hang them upside down. They're still alive, by the way, just in case anybody was wondering. I'm not talking about plucked chickens. I'm talking about chickens. Whole ass squawking chickens. And you find out real quick why everybody's got masks on and hoods on and all of that. Because if you don't have a mask on and a hood on, you're liable to get chicken shit in your face, because that's what chickens do when they're afraid. They shit. So now you're in this dark, dingy, wet, loud basement, which, by the way, it's so loud. The metal noise is so loud that they're playing hard rock music louder to try to drown out the sound of the metal clanging and the chickens. And as the chicken comes, you grab it and you hang it up by its feet, and it goes along its merry way, and you get covered in crap. And then once you start seeing this giant row of chickens hanging upside down, making a bunch of noise, going the other way, you realize, well, you're hanging them upside down, I guess, because the next spot is off with their heads, right? And just... So, I did my first 3 hours, and then it was lunchtime. And now I suppose that this would have changed, but I did not have a home-cooked meal for my lunch the day one, but they had a cafeteria there, so okay, cool. So I had a half hour, I believe, to get my gear off, get washed up, go to the cafeteria, stand in line, order the food, eat the food, get back, put the gear back on, and start working again. Half hour. So I got my gear off, hung it up, washed up, went to the cafeteria, waited in my line. And I was sorely disappointed at the choices. It was basically, you can have this, some kind of mystery meat, thin-ass burger. Maybe you could have this dried out piece of fried chicken, or maybe you could have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Hot dogs. I mean, that was what it was. It was, we're going to give you 5 choices that are quite possibly the most disgusting, cheapest choice that we could give you. You're still going to pay for it, by the way. You're still paying for it. It still costs you, half of the money, maybe all of the money you made in your last hour. Maybe not all of it, but most of it. It's still going to cost you. And it was just, So I got my cheeseburger and fries and a Coke. And I woofed it down a record time, because now I'm down to 12 minutes, 18 minutes, whatever it might have been, before I had to be back hanging chickens. And I don't know if it was right after eating the burger. I don't know if it was coming on before I ate the burger. But within a minute, 2 minutes of eating that burger, I mean, between the work I had just done, between the being in the noise and all of that and the burger, I just had the blasting worst migraine I had at that point, I think, in my life. And I knew I had Tylenol in my car. So I walked out. Still had time before I went back to work. I walked out and I had my Coke with me. Might have been a Mountain Dew. I was big on Mountain Dew back then. And I went and I sat in my car and I took my couple Tylenol, and I just felt like I was going to throw up, man. And I just never went back in. I just never went back in. I sat there for a couple of minutes. I said, nope. I started the car up, I drove home. And I walked in the door. By the time I walked in the door, the Tylenol wasn't working. And I mean, the headache was just incredible. It was nausea. I went into the bathroom, I started throwing up. And my ex is just like, shit, that's not good. That's not good. So, So she made the decision. I don't know how the decision was made at that point that she was going to go try to get a job at a bank. She had been a bank manager and all of that. And this would be a story that would play out over the marriage, over the course of all the of the entire marriage. Was she'd want to stay home with the kids, and then after about 5 hours, she'd like, okay, I need a job. I'm gonna go get a job, and I would. It was. So this was just the first of many times. So she went, got a job at a bank. No, she got a job at waste management during the day, and then I ended up getting a job at the Comfort Inn working at night. So it wasn't like I wasn't working. It just I wasn't hanging chickens. Got a job as a front desk clerk at the Comfort Inn, the overnight shift. Like I would get there at like 11 o'clock at night to start. That was rough. I'd be up with Kyle most of the day. She'd get home, eat dinner. I'd go to bed at like 7 or 8, and then have to wake up at like 10:30 to go to this overnight shift. And Kyle, it was a mess because Kyle was not a sleeper. If Kyle slept 45 minutes at any given point, day or night, it was miraculous. So I was working at the Comfort Inn, and I actually liked it because you talk about Eastern Shore of Virginia. It's not, the hotel's going to be full during the summer. During the fall and winter, it's going to be empty, so that's okay. This was obviously still summer, but it might have been post Labor Day by now, maybe. Anyway, the way it worked is I get in, like I said, I get in at 11 o'clock, have to do the shift change with the other guy that was there, work my shift. I had to do all the night audit paperwork and all of that. And then by about 2, I'd be done working. And generally speaking, between 2 and 5, before I had to get the breakfast ready and everything, they let me sleep in the lobby. And didn't even have to hide. It wasn't like I had to hide behind the desk. I could go out into the lobby. There were some nice comfy couches. And as long as I set my alarm, they let me sleep. If the phone rang, I'd hear it. There was a bell if somebody came to the door to check in or something happened. I got woke up a couple of times, but there's plenty of times I slept. So it wasn't too bad. So one night I come in and I'm doing the shift change stuff, and the other guy is in the other room, and he's done with his work, but he's on a phone call. And he says to this person, says, well, once I get home, I got to pack up those dishes I sold on eBay, and then I probably get to bed. So he comes out, and I'm like, what's eBay? It's $19.99. I said, what's eBay? So he tells me, well, it's this website where you sell stuff. You can sell your own stuff or buy stuff for resale and then sell it on eBay, and you pack it up and they send it off. You send it off to them. I didn't say anything else to him. But the wheels were turning. And so, again, I don't remember how it happened. I don't remember the order of things, but there's only one order that makes sense. Because I couldn't have done one part of the story without the first part. But somehow, even though we didn't have a computer, I don't know if we researched what eBay was. I don't know how. I don't know if we went to the library. I don't remember. But somehow I ended up convinced that this is what I want to do. I had to call my parents and borrow like $1,000 to buy a computer. Now, for those of you who are too young to have grown up when the internet was in its infancy, oh, I cannot describe to you the slowness. I mean, it was nothing to wait 30 seconds for a page to load. That was... Now, if you had web TV, forget about that. If you had web TV, if you don't know what web TV was, it was a little box that you connected to your TV through the phone line. And that son of a bitch, that was... You clicked on an item for the page to load, you go get a drink, take a leak, come back, page is like 80% loaded. So it was a completely different experience. But somehow, without having a computer, we decided that this is what, well, I decided this is what I was going to do. So, let me take a sip of water here. I got distracted for a second because I don't know if the noise got picked up on camera, but there must have been a deer in the yard with me that just jumped over the fence, because there was a loud noise. It was a loud noise. It had to be a deer. I have it's a 4 foot, 3.5, 4 foot wire fence that I installed. But it's, it's almost like an acre that's fenced in, so the deer, they just pop right in and they just do whatever they want to do. It must have been. So, okay, so I call my parents, hey, give me money. I didn't have $1,000 to buy a computer, you know what I mean? So we get this computer, and I remember the reason why the story was triggered is because I was at an auction. I was at an auction Thursday night with someone, and when Kyle and I are there buying stuff, we always get people asking, you must have a store. And then I say, we sell on eBay. And they say, really? You can do that on eBay? And I'm like, oh boy. There's still people that don't realize how much of a living you can make on eBay. But that's okay. So, get the computer and get set up. Now, again, for those of you who are, most of you probably don't remember what eBay was like in 1999. But in 1999, if you had a digital camera, you were fancy. There were no phones taking pictures. Okay? If you had a digital camera and knew how to upload a photo to eBay, that was like, you was a programmer, okay? I mean, you was fancy. You was top dog at that point. They weren't cheap. And I mean, there were whole video tutorials and people trying to figure out, okay, so now I plug the camera in where? And then I have to get the photo off of the camera to the computer. I mean, it was a process, man. So the point is that the majority of eBay listings didn't even have a photo, because nobody knew how to get the photos from... Nobody could figure it out. Some people obviously could. But it was just completely acceptable and normal to upload a item for sale on eBay that didn't have a photo. Completely normal. And so that's what we did. That's what I did. I went to... It was one Saturday. Mount yard sailing, and there was this old guy, real character, this real old southern black guy, real character, and he's having a yard sale, and his house was like right on the main road. It was right on 13, and he's got a yard sale going on. I'm talking to him a little bit. I don't remember what we're talking about, but he said, well, I got some books in this shed over here. Maybe you're interested in those. Now, this wasn't anything he was thinking about selling. I hadn't started really selling on eBay yet, so it wasn't like I'm looking for books. It just kind of, he just kind of offered it. And so I walked over to this shed all the way in the back of his property. He opens it up, and there's 30, 40 boxes. And I'm talking about good size, like moving boxes. These weren't small boxes. And they're full of books. But they weren't full of books that you would find at the library or something like that. They were full of these little, very, very small, thin books. They might be 3 inches by 2 inches, printed on the rice paper. They, if you think about like what a hymnal would look like, very small, but they weren't hymnals. They were they were Buddhist books. They were books on Buddhism, but they were the real deal, like printed in the early 1900s, 1905, 1908. Some of them were 1912 or whatever. And they were all printed in India. And I mean, these were the real deal. And I got 20, 30 boxes of these, and it's full of them. And he sold me all the books for $20. Now, he was griping about it. You're killing me with the price. Come on. I'm like, that's what I got. That's what I got. Baby seats in the back of the car. He's like, well, if you think you can make some money with these, all right. He sold them all to me for $20. I get them home. Now, again, for those of you who are familiar with eBay but not familiar with the way it was, there was no searching things by completed auction. I mean, you might have been able to do that. Maybe I could remember that. But you know, if you had a very common item, you could probably do that. But these books, you had no idea. And here's the kicker. It didn't matter anyway. Because the only format that you could sell with on eBay at that point was auction. There was no researching it and saying, okay, this is worth $30 and putting a $30 buy it now on there. There wasn't even buy it now on auctions at that point. The only method of sales at that point was put it in auction, pick your starting price, and whatever it ended at, that's what it ended at. So I start listing these books. 7 days, 7-day auctions. And the books start ending. $50, $70, $80, $90. $120. Oh crap, that one only ended at $20 per book. I mean, they're just... So I'm just listing more. I'm like, this crazy. This was crazy. But you got to remember, it's 1999. By now it's probably 2000. We're probably into... excuse me. We're probably into winter and spring of the next year at this point. You know, as we're really getting rolling with things. But there's no pictures. But it was, the markets had not been collected out, right? This was the first time anybody around the world that might have been wanting these books, it's the first time they were really available to that kind of market. And they had just been sitting in his old man's shed in the middle of nowhere on the eastern shore of Virginia. And so I was hooked. I mean, started going to auctions, buying stuff. We ended up moving back to Florida. That's a long story. It's this whole other podcast. We ended up moving back to Florida, but we moved to Melbourne, Florida. got the house behind my brother Gene, brother from another mother Gene. I apologize for the coughing. It's humid. It's very schmutzy, and that causes me to have a little cough sometimes. So I moved back to Florida, and my ex had been working for Waste Management. She gets transferred to the Melbourne office. But she says, I want to stay home with Kyle now. Now you got to go get a job. I'm like, crap. I was doing eBay. I was having fun. So I go and I get a job. I got a job. It wasn't terrible either. It was, I think it was True Green, some lawn company. They come and you spray the yard for bugs and stuff like that. It wasn't bad for that. For what pay was back then. I think it was like $26,000, and they gave me a truck, and I had a gas card. So it was good. As soon as I got the job, my ex was like, nah, I think I changed my mind. I'm going to stay at Waste Management. You stay home with the kid. As soon as I went and I got the job, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a truck, because we only had one vehicle at this time. So I was like, okay. But at the same time, like within a day of that, in the neighborhood we had moved into, somebody was having a yard sale. And I walked over to the yard sale, and they had like 4 walkie-talkies. They were $10 a piece. And I bought one. I brought it home, and then I researched it. And I'm like, I can get $50 for this thing. So I ran back over, and I bought the other 3. And that was it. That was the last discussion of me having a quote real job, regular job. And that was it. And that was 2000. That was in summer of 2000 when that happened, and it is now fall of 2024. And I've dabbled in, I've always had the store. The eBay store has always remained. Now, at one point I became a massage therapist. There was about a year period where I did not sell anything on eBay because I was doing the massage, I was doing just fine. But my body did not like giving massages that often, and so I eventually ended up going back. But I had it to go back to, you know what I mean? And with all of the twists and turns of life and divorce and with everything that's going on in the last 6 months, with both my dogs passing, my girlfriend moving out, 5-year relationship going, almost 6 years really, and just being automatically just thrust in this financial position where it's like, I got to make this extra money now, like now. We had the eBay store up and running, but we weren't really working it. And now we started working it again, and it's saving my ass again. All because I heard that guy on the phone say, I got to pack up these dishes on eBay, and that I sold on eBay. And I said, what's eBay? I mean, that was 25 years ago. That would have been 20, it's interesting now I think about it. The timing of that was 25 years ago. Got to be this month. Got to be this month. Because we moved there first week of July. I got the chicken hanging job. Let's say I quit that by the second week or third week in July. I'm sure I took a week before getting the job. So let's say I left the chicken hanging job by the third week of July. There was about a month period there, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, where I worked part-time for the city of, I think it was only, I worked for this city doing like like cleaning up the streets, like weed eating the sidewalks and stuff like that, because it's you get the tourists there for the summer. I did that for a little bit, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough money. It wasn't enough hours, and so then I started working at the hotel. And I was not at the hotel very long, because once I heard about eBay yeah, I wasn't at the hotel very long, because now I'm remembering once I learned about eBay and we got the computer and we found the books, I quit the hotel job, and I remember watching the last Dan Marino game, the Dolphins playoff, the Jaguars, when we got walloped. I remember watching that with Kyle during the day, and I know that I was no longer at the hotel at that point. So, I mean, that was pretty rapid fire. So it would have had to have been probably this month, September, 25 years ago, that I asked that question. And I just wonder if it was 25 years ago today. Like, it could legitimately be, I'd never remember the exact timing, but it could legitimately be 25 years ago today, and I'm just retelling the story. That's crazy. I'm just realizing that now. And so what's the point? What's the lesson, right? It's like, well, number one, you never know what something's going to be if you quit. I mean, the eBay store allowed me to stay home with the kid, and then the second kid, and then the third kid, and it when everybody kind of was losing it after 9/11, financially we were fine. When the 2007, 2008 crash, when that happened, we were fine. It has, and now, there's no way I could continue to do what I'm doing with the other YouTube channels that I have if I didn't have that eBay store. I would have had to go hang chickens again. No, not likely. Not likely. And the part to it is just, it sounds kind of nosy, but sometimes messages will be delivered to you from other people, through other people. I mean, when you think about everything that went on in that man's life and everything that went on in my life, for me to hear him say, for the timing to have aligned, for me to hear him say, that was almost the only part of the conversation I heard. It was like, wah, 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 I got to pack up these dishes that I sold on eBay, and then I'll go to bed, wah, 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 right? It was just, I was meant to hear that. And so Kyle and I were at an auction Thursday night, and something that's happened a million times, and it's not a complaint, but something that has happened a million times happened, where if you've ever been to an auction, you're engaged with the auctioneer, you're bidding, right? And this lady starts talking to me in between the bids. Oh, you must have a store. No, we do it on eBay. Oh, really? And then, she's interested in that story. I'm trying to tell her that story, but I'm also trying to engage with the auctioneer. And there was a bunch of trays of collectible cars, new in the box. And I wanted them, so I was buying them one tray at a time. The last tray, I wasn't really... What ended up happening was, while she's literally talking to me, she's trying to talk to me in the middle of me looking at the auctioneer and bidding. And she's asking me a question. And I can't answer her because I'm in the middle of bidding, and I'm just like in amazement that, well, don't talk to me. I'm in the middle of, it's like, it should be like a known thing, right? It's like a known, like you shouldn't have to tell somebody if somebody's in the middle of engaging with the auctioneer, now it's not the time to start talking in their ear and asking them questions, but it happens. And so, long story short, is I placed my bid, and then he looked to the other person, and they were taking a couple of seconds to decide if they were going to up their bid. And she asked me the question again. And at the same time that she asked me the question, the auctioneer turned back to me to see if I was going to raise my bid because the other person had. And I looked at her and said, yes. The auctioneer took it as yes and jacked up my bid again another $4 or $5, and then went back to the other person. They said no, and so I won the truck. So I won the cars a little bit. I paid a little bit more than I wanted to. It wasn't a big deal, but it was just funny because I knew better. I know better. You don't, and that's not how I bid anyway. But it still was a yes. I don't give a verbal yes. I just give a little teeny tiny nod. You would not even know I was talking to the auctioneer, but I am. But because they know me, so they know everybody has a different bidding style. And so for me, it's just like this, just a little teeny tiny nod of the neck. It's not unusual. A lot of people will do that. It's just, I don't know why that is, but we do it. But he looked right as he was turning towards me. I'm like, yes. I had trying to answer her question. Yeah, whatever I said. And then he even repeated back to me, because he knew it was something unusual for me to verbally give my bid. I said, yeah. He says, yes. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. I just started laughing. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. I wasn't going to stand there and be like, no, I didn't mean to bid. It was like, it's only $4 or $5, whatever the bid. It might have only been $2.50 actually. Might have just went from $15 to $17.50. But that's happened to me a couple of times. But it's my fault. My fault. I know better. No big deal, though. No big deal. That was it. That was it. I don't know why I felt moved to tell that story this morning. Maybe it is 25 years ago today. It absolutely could be. 100% could be 25 years ago today. I wish there was a way. I mean, I don't have old pay stubs or anything like that, so there's no way for me to know. There's no way for me to know. But, boy, the timing of that, if it was about this time that I heard, about eBay, I know it took another 2 weeks to get the money in from my parents, get the computer, get it set up. It wasn't like there's just internet. Back then, it was like you had to call up and be like, I would like internet installed at my house. And they had to come out and hang a wire. And, I mean, it wasn't just everybody had internet back there. They had to come out and it was a project. So that would have taken, a couple of weeks. And then I got to find the books. They start selling. Now we're into November. And by January, I had quit the hotel. So it could have very... Oh, I wish there was a way I could know. But there's not. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. This one was a little bit fun. A little bit more fun and light than some of the last ones. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit that subscribe button. And I will see you again in the next one real soon.